It was a crisp autumn evening in Mobius, and the sky was painted with the deep oranges and purples of twilight. Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, and Amy were on their way back to Tails' workshop after a long day of adventuring when they noticed something strange on the horizon. A massive carnival had appeared seemingly out of nowhere, its bright lights flickering and illuminating the evening sky. The Ferris wheel turned slowly, casting long, eerie shadows over the ground. The air was thick with the faint sound of carnival music, slightly out of tune and distorted, as if coming from an old, broken record player. "That wasn't here yesterday, was it?" Amy asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Nope," Sonic replied, narrowing his eyes at the sight. "And I've been through this area a lot. There's never been a carnival here." "Well, maybe it's just new," Knuckles suggested, though even he sounded doubtful. "Could be fun." Tails, however, was more cautious. "Something feels off about this place." Despite their unease, curiosity got the better of them. Sonic, always eager for something new, grinned and sped ahead toward the entrance, his friends following close behind. The carnival gates stood wide open, though no one seemed to be manning them. A large faded sign overhead read, "Carnival of Shadows, enter if you dare." "That's not ominous at all," Tails muttered as they stepped inside. They were greeted by the sights and sounds of an old, run-down carnival. The rides creaked and groaned, the once bright colors of the tents had faded to dingy shades of gray, and the booths were covered in cobwebs. Yet, despite the decay, the carnival was alive with activity. Strange figures moved through the shadows, their faces obscured by masks. "Where is everyone?" Amy asked, her eyes darting around nervously. "Something's wrong here," Sonic said, his senses on high alert. "Stay close." As they ventured deeper into the carnival, the atmosphere grew more oppressive. The music, once cheerful, now seemed distorted and sinister. The rides moved on their own, empty swings twisting in the breeze, and the Ferris wheel turned with a slow mechanical groan. They passed by a series of funhouse mirrors, each one reflecting their images back in strange, twisted ways. Sonic's reflection stared back at him with glowing red eyes, its smile too wide and sinister. Knuckles' reflection seemed warped, his muscles grotesquely exaggerated, while Amy's reflection flickered and faded, like a ghost. "Okay, this is getting creepy," Knuckles muttered, stepping away from the mirrors. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and the carnival music screeched to a halt. A deep, unsettling voice echoed through the grounds. "Welcome, brave souls, to the Carnival of Shadows. You've entered. But will you be able to leave?" The voice sent chills down their spines, and the ground beneath them trembled slightly. "We need to find a way out of here," Tails said, looking around for an exit. But the moment they turned back, the entrance gate had disappeared, replaced by a towering funhouse with a neon sign that read, "Face your fears." "We don't have a choice, do we?" Sonic asked, trying to stay calm. "Looks like we have to go through." Reluctantly, they entered the funhouse. The inside was a maze of narrow hallways and shifting walls, each corner filled with disorienting lights and eerie laughter that echoed from unseen sources. The further they ventured, the more unsettling it became. The first room they entered was filled with old carnival posters, each one depicting a different act. As they moved past, the posters began to move, the figures within them shifting unnaturally. Amy gasped as she passed a poster of a fortune teller. The woman's eyes followed her, and as Amy walked by, the fortune teller's hand slowly raised, pointing directly at her. "Let's keep moving," Sonic said, pulling Amy forward. The next room was worse. The floor tilted at odd angles, and the walls seemed to close in, making it hard to keep their balance. The sound of footsteps echoed behind them, but every time they turned around, there was nothing there. "Who's following us?" Knuckles growled, clenching his fists. Tails shook his head, scanning the area with his scanner. "There's no one. But it's like the carnival itself is alive." Suddenly, a loud screech echoed through the hallway, and the lights flickered wildly. A door slammed open ahead of them, leading into a darkened room with a single carousel in the center. The carousel was old and decaying, its horses chipped and cracked. But as they approached, the carousel began to move on its own, the horses' heads twisting unnaturally to face them. One by one, the horses' eyes glowed red, and they let out shrill neighs, their mouths opening far too wide, revealing rows of sharp teeth. "Run!" Sonic shouted, grabbing Amy's hand and pulling her toward the next exit. They dashed through the funhouse, the sound of distorted carnival music chasing them. Each room was more twisted than the last, rooms filled with mirrors that reflected their worst nightmares, corridors that stretched endlessly, and hallways where the walls seemed to close in like a giant mouth ready to swallow them whole. Finally, they reached the end of the funhouse, bursting through the exit and collapsing onto the ground outside, gasping for air, but their relief was short-lived. Standing before them was the carnival's ringmaster, a tall, shadowy figure dressed in a tattered, old-fashioned ringmaster's coat. His face was hidden behind a porcelain mask, and his eyes glowed an eerie green. "Leaving so soon?" the ringmaster asked, his voice dripping with malice. "The fun has just begun." Without warning, the ground beneath them cracked open, revealing a massive chasm filled with dark, swirling mist. The rides around them twisted and transformed, becoming monstrous versions of themselves. The Ferris wheel groaned as its spokes stretched into sharp, jagged claws, while the carousel horses galloped through the air, their twisted forms circling above. "Stay together," Sonic shouted as the ringmaster began to summon creatures from the mist. Dark, shadowy figures emerged, their forms shifting and flickering, as if they were made of pure nightmare. They closed in on the group, their hollow eyes glowing with a sinister light. Tails quickly adjusted a gadget on his wrist, aiming it at the creatures. "I think I can disrupt their energy fields. Cover me." Sonic, Knuckles, and Amy fought off the advancing creatures, while Tails worked furiously on his device. The ringmaster watched with amusement, his laughter echoing across the carnival grounds. Finally, with a burst of light, Tails activated his gadget, sending a shockwave through the air. The shadowy creatures disintegrated, and the ringmaster's mask cracked, revealing a dark void where his face should have been. "You think you've won?" the ringmaster hissed, his voice full of venom. "This carnival never dies. You'll never escape." But as he spoke, the cracks in his mask spread, and the carnival around them began to collapse. The rides crumbled, the lights flickered out, and the eerie music faded into nothingness. With a final scream, the ringmaster shattered into dust, and the carnival vanished, leaving only an empty field behind. The storm clouds parted, revealing the night sky filled with stars. The group stood in stunned silence, trying to comprehend what had just happened. "Is it over?" Amy asked, her voice shaking. Sonic nodded, though he still felt uneasy. "Yeah, but let's not stick around to find out if it comes back." Without looking back, they left the field, their footsteps the only sound in the now silent night. But even as they walked away, Sonic couldn't shake the feeling that the Carnival of Shadows was still watching, waiting for its next victims to arrive.